So being a self-proclaimed perfectionist has always been generally regarded as a positive thing, right? Somebody who calls themselves a perfectionist is likely a very hard worker and somebody with meticulous attention to detail and somebody who just cares a lot, somebody who has very high standards, and generally that should be considered a good thing, right? In fact, calling yourself a perfectionist is probably one of the most popular humble brags in response to being asked in a job interview, what are your weaknesses or what are your faults? People say,
I'm just a perfectionist. Oh, I just set very high standards for myself. Oh, I can never satisfy myself. Ha 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 ha.
And the truth is that it's not funny. Something that's often not discussed are the unreasonably high standards that perfectionists set for themselves and for others. Standards that are often so high that they can't be met, which just leads to a never-ending cycle of disappointment and dissatisfaction. I didn't realize it until more recently, but I think I've been a perfectionist my entire life, starting with really dumb things when I was younger and growing into much bigger, more serious things as I've gotten older. For example, when I was a little kid, I remember getting a box of the 64 Crayola crayons, the one that has all the colors, and I would pay meticulous attention to making sure that if I took out one crayon to use it, that I put it back right in the exact spot in the box where it came from, even though it shouldn't matter. The idea of mixing up all of the colors and putting them in a different order than they were originally packaged in was something that just drove me crazy, and I know how stupid that is, but as a little kid, it was something that really bothered me. I used to try so hard to color within the lines, and I've never been a naturally artsy person in that regard, and so often I would scribble outside of the lines, and it would drive me crazy. If I scribbled outside of the lines in one particular coloring book, to me that coloring book was just ruined. It was garbage, and I wanted to get a new one and start all over again. And again, I know how small that sounds on the greater scale of life, but as a little kid, I think that was just kind of the beginning stage of my brain not accepting flaws that are normal and natural in life. I tend to be a bit obsessed about the way things are supposed to be and have a very hard time accepting the way that they actually are. I have such high expectations for myself in almost everything, and often those expectations don't actually align with my abilities. I'm endlessly hard on myself, and I think I always have been. When I make a YouTube video, I have this idea in my head of how I want it to look and how I want it to come together, and unfortunately, my skills at this point are just not in alignment with the end product that I want to see. I'm not that great of a videographer, I'm not that great of a video editor, and I'm learning and I think I'm getting better, but ultimately, I'm kind of disappointed with almost every video I make because, again, my skill set and my abilities just don't line up to the expectations that I have for myself. I do my best, but my best is never enough for me. When I make a mistake, my negative self-talk becomes so loud that I can't hear anything else. I tell myself that I'm stupid, that I'm an idiot, that I'm lazy, that it's all my fault, that I'm undeserving, that I'm greedy, that I'm materialistic and selfish and immature, and I say all of these things, and it's really interesting because I've heard for so long about these ideas of negative self-talk associated with when somebody has depression or anxiety, and I have both of those things, but I never really understood it because in those contexts, I don't struggle with negative self-talk or negative thoughts about myself necessarily, but when I make a mistake, it all comes rushing in at once. You're stupid, that's why you did that. How could you be so dumb to do that again? What's wrong with you? Why aren't you ever happy with what you have? It's endless and it's exhausting and it's terrible. And in those moments, I fully believe all of those terrible things about myself, even if nobody else does. I have a very hard time letting go, and while I have lots of empathy for others, I have almost none for myself. I recognize that, and I recognize how little sense that makes, but it's just the truth. We're all only human, and everybody makes mistakes, and that's normal, and it's part of life. But not for me, or at least I don't want it to be for me. No joke, I will sometimes think of things that I said or did 5, 10, even 20 years ago, and 20 years ago I was just a little kid. But I'll think of those things and I will endlessly beat myself up about it still. I'll feel remorse, I'll feel regret, I'll feel humiliation. And I know how dumb that is because we all do dumb things in life. It happens, especially when you're young, but it's such a struggle for me to just let go of. And it affects my social relationships too, because not only do I have unreasonably high standards for myself, but I have unreasonably high standards for everyone else in my life. I struggle to let go of the past and I ruminate endlessly. And so while perfectionism as an idea is often linked to, again, meticulous standards, hard work, productivity, for me, it's the complete opposite. It doesn't make me productive. It makes me stationary. It makes me scared to try new things in fear of failure, in fear of messing up, in fear of making a decision that I come to regret that I can't later reverse. I'm often too afraid to try new things because I know that my abilities will never meet up with my expectations. If you've been following my channel for a little while now, then you'll know that back in the spring I made the decision to sell my house and buy another one, buy this one here, and I have regretted that decision almost every single day since then. I can't stop thinking about it. I regret selling my previous house. I regret buying this house. I'm just in the midst of renovations. Sneak peek right behind me, you can see my new kitchen cabinets coming in. I regret doing the renovations. I regret all of this, and I just can't let it go. As stupid as this sounds, this house was an impulse buy. And I know, like, who buys a house impulsively? Of all the things in the world you can buy impulsively, who would buy a house impulsively? Apparently I did. And I wish that I hadn't. I rushed through the showing, I didn't look carefully at a lot of things, and when I moved into this house, I realized that I hated it. And then I started planning the renovation, which was supposed to help me to like this house more. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I did it again. I made a really bad decision impulsively again. I was feeling overwhelmed at the time, and I wound up picking the wrong cabinets. And it wasn't until they were installed this week that I realized that they weren't what I meant to order. How could I do something so stupid and impulsively make such a big decision after all this, all over again? I have been making myself crazy about this. The cabinets that have been installed behind me are the cabinets that I picked, but they're not the cabinets that I meant to pick. And when I realized that earlier this week, I'm embarrassed to say that I had a complete meltdown. And it embarrasses me because this is such a first world problem and I recognize that. But to be honest with you, my meltdown was not about the cabinets. It was not about any one particular thing. It was about me just feeling so overwhelmed with life and so disappointed in myself that I just couldn't take it anymore. They may not be the cabinets that I meant to pick, but I don't dislike them. They look fine. But I know myself, and the problem is that even if time goes on and I actually decide that I like these better than what I intended to pick, let's say I even decide down the road that even if it was a mistake, it was a good mistake, and I'm really happy with it, I'm glad that I got them, I can't let go of the fact that I was so dumb, that I made such a bad mistake, again, so shortly after buying this house, which was such a big mistake to begin with. And so I won't even let myself enjoy the fact that I have this new thing because all I can keep thinking about is how dumb I am and how stupid of a decision I made. And I can't believe I did it again. Can't believe I didn't learn from the first time and be more careful and think it through and pay better attention. And I know that I'm being unnecessarily hard on myself. And I know that this isn't that big of a deal, but I just can't let it go. And this impulsivity, this lack of attention to detail, this isn't like me typically. I'm usually very careful because of these particular situations, because I know how hard I am on myself. I go so far out of my way to try to avoid making mistakes and screwing up in a way that's going to make me feel this way. And honestly, I've just been burnt out. I've just been taking on more than I can reasonably manage. Something in my brain broke during that whole moving fiasco back in the spring, and I've never really been the same again since then. I know I didn't really go into too much detail at that time. There were a couple weeks where I missed uploading a video a few weeks in a row, which I know was also unlike me. And the reason for that was honestly, I went through a straight up nervous breakdown. Like for, I don't know, a month or more, a month and a half, basically from the time that I put my house on the market till it actually sold. And even a little after that, I was not good. I was not okay. And though now I'm definitely a lot better than I was in that particular moment, I'm still not 100%. I'm still not totally back to my usual self, and I'm not sure that I ever will be. I feel very much like it has changed me. Like there was a version of Nicole before the mental breakdown, and there's a version of myself after that. And things are different for me now. I find that I'm being even more critical of myself than I ever have been before. My threshold for stress is at an all-time low. I'm being downright paranoid at times, which is not at all like me, and I just can't seem to help it. And most prominently, I'm just living with a lot of uncertainty. I'm living with a lot of regret for some of the decisions that I made that I think were bad decisions. I'm living with a lot of uncertainty and regret for knowing that I made some mistakes, which is normal, but as a perfectionist, it's a very hard pill to swallow. And this is the side of perfectionism that I think isn't talked about and needs to be, because I'm sure that I'm not the only one. Yesterday was my 30th birthday. And all I can think about is how much pressure I've put on myself over the last 10 years and over my entire life, to be quite honest with you. Your 20s are supposed to be a time where you're allowed or even encouraged to make mistakes. You're supposed to be irresponsible. You're supposed to live life carefree and just enjoy the last bit of your youth before you actually have to become a real adult. And I spent my 20s putting an astronomical amount of pressure on myself. I started a business. I bought a house. I sold that house. I bought another house. I'm renovating that house. It's almost done now. There's just been one thing after another. That's not even including personal and family stuff. And I've basically been white-knuckling my way through life for the last 20 years at least. And while from the outside, it might look like I've got it all figured out, the truth is I don't feel like I've lived very much at all. I haven't given myself much of an allowance to have fun, and I want to change that. I've been hyper-frugal to get myself to where I wanted to be, or at least to where I thought I wanted to be. I haven't traveled, I've barely dated, I've deprived myself of a lot of social interaction because I've been busy working on my business, working on this YouTube channel, working on my home, working on trying to build a life for myself while not having a life at all, which I know sounds contradictory, but I think you know what I mean. And now I'm 30. Holy shit. And so I'm making it my mission to make my 30s the second round of my 20s, to give myself an opportunity to chill, to stop overthinking, to be able to live life a little bit more, to be a little more social, to chase more experiences, and ultimately to be a little bit more impulsive. But that doesn't come naturally to me because I'm so scared of impulsively making a decision that I come to regret that I can't reverse. This is a pretty topical example, but I've always wanted a tattoo. I've always wanted many tattoos, pretty much since I was a kid, forever. I've always wanted tattoos. If you had told me that I was going to make it to 30 without a tattoo, I would have been so disappointed in myself. But the truth is that the only thing that has stopped me is the knowledge that I could come to regret it one day. And that's not a way to live. I recognize you can't live life today in fear of tomorrow or next year or 10 years from now. But I want tattoos. I like tattoos. I'm scared to do anything to my body or my life in general that is irreversible and permanent. And I know tattoos are technically reversible, removable, whatever. But I feel like that's just, even though it's a really small, not so important, kind of very topical example, I feel like that's a really good kind of overview of how I've lived my life. I have stopped myself from doing the things that I naturally want to do in fear of coming to regret it later and not being able to change it, not being able to go back. And quite honestly, it's exhausting. And this is going to require a huge mindset shift from me to stop being such a fucking perfectionist, to accept the fact that there is no such thing as perfection. There are flaws in everything and everyone and every facet of life. It's just, that's how life is. You'll get scratches on your cars, you'll get scuffs on your knees, you'll get rips in your jeans, you'll chip teeth, your hair will go gray, you'll get some tattoos you might regret, you'll make some decisions in general you might regret. That's normal, that's called a life lived. And I wish I was better at it. I hope this video doesn't come across as too much of a downer, but honestly, it's something that I felt that I needed to get off my chest for a while now, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one who feels this way. I'm sure that there are a lot of people who can relate to this, and if so, I would love to hear your experiences. Are you somebody who's very hard on yourself, or have you ever made a big decision that you've come to regret, and how did you reconcile that in your own head? If you have an experience like that, please leave me a comment down below and let me know, because right now I feel like I'm probably the only one, even though I know objectively, reasonably, that I can't be the only one. But I would love to know if we have something in common and if you can relate to this at all. If you enjoyed this video, if you found any value in it, or even just found it entertaining, please go ahead and hit that like button. I really appreciate you guys hanging out, watching my videos, engaging with my content, and every like I get helps me out a lot. If you haven't done so yet, feel free to subscribe as well. Next week, I'm thinking I will be able to give you guys a little update on the whole renovation situation. Like I said, there's a little sneak peek behind me. I think it's really funny. In my last video, I asked you guys to guess what color scheme or design pattern you thought I was going with my kitchen, and everybody was like, oh, I bet it's going to be gray and white. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm predictable. I am who I am. I like what I like, huh? There it is. But I'll show you guys a little bit more in depth probably next week. So definitely hit subscribe so you don't miss out on that and all of my other future videos as well. If you haven't done so yet, you can also follow me on Instagram at according_to_Nicole. Other than that, thank you guys so much as always for watching. I genuinely appreciate it. Take care, have a good week, and I'll see you next weekend. Bye!